Here's another example of how we might try to generate interest. This is an email that went out recently for the UCEA South Regional Conference, which, by the way, is here in Atlanta. We'd love to see any of you guys come down, even if you don't live in the Southeast. Just come visit us. Atlanta's fun. And what you can see in this is that this, to me, this is a good, I didn't write this, but this is a good example of a compelling email for marketing purposes. It's got some good text. It doesn't have a big chunk of text. So in other words, there's not a paragraph with 5 or 6 sentences in it. The text is broken up nicely. There's some images that draw your attention there. But more than anything, we're giving people a lot, this email gives people a lot of different things that they could click on. Do you want to visit the website? Are you interested in discounts? Are you interested in putting together a proposal to speak at the conference? Do you want to check out the conference center at the very bottom of the email where the conference is going to be held? And then you also have this register, big red register now button at the top. So we're giving people a lot of different things that they can click on because we don't know which of those things is going to be the most enticing to people. So that's an example of an effective interest-generating email that's likely to get a pretty high click-through rate. This is what I was referring to a bit earlier when I mentioned bounce rate. So this is straight from Google Analytics. And what I want you to pay attention to is not the black bounce rate there. That's the bounce rate for the particular site that this came from, but the gray benchmark percentage below it. That benchmark percentage is a measure across all of the websites that are in Google Analytics that are large continuing education, whatever Google considers to be large, which they don't tell us precisely. But 45.21% of people who arrive at what Google considers to be fairly large continuing education related websites leave immediately. So that's scary because what that means is, let's say you're doing pay-per-click marketing and you've got a 45, and by the way, that's the average. So let's say you have a 50 or a 60% bounce rate because your site is not good at keeping people there. Then for every person that you send from pay-per-click marketing, which you're paying money for, you have only a 50% chance or even less than a 50% chance that those people are going to stick around on the site. So a lot of that is wasted money. So bounce rate's definitely something we want to try to manage. Here's another example of a site. This site, my firm just launched this last week for the New York Times. They have an educational division that partners with continuing education units, and what you can see here is all of these different areas of the site, and we worked with them on the design. We're not a design firm, so I give them credit, their marketing team, for a lot of the design of this site. But you can see we've got a navigation bar. We've got what's there right in the middle. This attractive lady is part of a flash animation that gives a little bit of movement to the website, so it gives people something to watch. And then we're giving them featured courses at the bottom, which are interesting. We're giving them 4 different ways to try to find a course in the upper right-hand corner. We're letting them sign up for a mailing list if they'd like to. We're giving them some news events, and there's even a search box at the top of the right. So all of these are ways that we're trying to entice people to dig deeper into the website. Or in other words, we're trying to lower the bounce rate by giving people a very uncluttered image and giving them some very specific things that we think are going to be engaging for them. So how do we measure all of this? So it's one thing to say we put together this very attractive website, but how do we know whether or not that website is actually effective? And by the way, on this particular example, we were able to just launched, I think, Wednesday or Thursday of last week. But so far with our web metrics, we have reduced the bounce rate on the site by 30%, which was one of the primary goals of the redesign because they had a very high bounce rate. And so it looks to be that it is actually achieving the goals that we set out when they decided to redesign it. So we've lowered the bounce rate by 30%, which we're very happy with. So how do we measure this? Well, click-through rate. So how many people that see your ads click on your ads? How many website visitors total do you get? And then what is your bounce rate? And you can see here is an example at the top of pay-per-click and at the bottom email. These are measurements of click-through rate. And you can see some In some areas, you're going to have a higher click-through rate than others, but the goal should always be within an area to try to improve that click-through rate over time. So we can see what that is, pay-per-click, and at the bottom, you can see we had, in this case, a 4.8% click-through rate for the emails that were sent. Okay, so again, be something to try to improve over time. Here's an example of some Google Analytics metrics showing us, in this case, from April to May, about a 1-month period. We had over 1,000 visitors to this particular website, and they had a 34% bounce rate. So this is the kinds of things that we can measure, and as we make improvements, to try to decrease the bounce rate and try to increase the number of visits. As our third poll for the day, just keep us all engaged here. I'm curious if you guys don't mind sharing whether you're using Google Analytics or some other kind of web analytics package. You may be using no web analytics, or you may just not know. And I'm just curious because the last statistics that I saw showed that about 60% of all websites were using Google Analytics. That was about a year ago. So I should say 60% of all websites that we're measuring were using Google Analytics. We've got about 86% of respondents. I'll give just a minute longer, and then I'll share these back with you guys as well. Okay, I'm going to close that poll and show you the results. And interestingly, it's a little above 60% are using Google Analytics. So again, if you're not familiar with what Google Analytics is, and by the way, there are many other really good web analytics software packages out there. I think the advantage that Google has is, number one, it's completely free, and it is, in most people's estimation, better than just about any analytics package except for some very high-priced ones that are in the tens of thousands of dollars. So it's excellent, it's free. The only downside is some people are a little concerned that they're giving Google all of this great information about their website visitors, and that someday Google will be our overlord, and we'll have to deal with that. But most people, as you can see, are using Google Analytics. So I'll have some other screenshots here from Google Analytics for you. Okay, so our third stage is engagement. So in this stage, the goal is we've got to make people engage. We've got to get people's desire up. We want to make them want to participate in our programs. Okay, and there's a lot of ways that we can do this, but the engagement stage, I think of it as the motivation stage. We've gotten someone to stay on our website, they didn't bounce, but now why are they going to want to enroll? And we have to convince them of that. So it's motivation and convincing them. And there are different ways that we can do that. A lot of it, online at least, is through informing people, engaging them and informing them. So we put interactive elements up there like forward to a friend features or wish lists or customer testimonials, student comments. We put up video clips, articles, white papers, maybe a blog from a professor, and as much information as you're comfortable sharing about your courses. And you can share things, student comments, learning objectives, in fact, full course outlines. If that's not proprietary, putting that information out there is just one more way that you can engage with the people coming to your website. So here's some examples of that. This is an example, again, from Emory University, where we work closely, of a testimonial from a graduate. So you can see right here, this is actually the home page of this certificate's site, that we've got a bit of a testimonial, and then you can click read more to see more about this person. But you can see right from this, they graduated from the program, they now have a job at a law firm, and so it's a way of just saying you could be like this person. And then below that, we've got a student experience video with some comments from instructors in the program, some graduates from the program, those kinds of things. So these are engagement tools to try to get people to delve deeper, learn more, become more familiar with what we have.